You're listening to Lead, a CEO podcast. Mike, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, so we're excited to jump right into the conversation. Mike Collins, CEO at Alumni Ventures. Really, it's been really cool getting to know you over the past couple months, and we're excited to jump into this conversation here. But Mike, for our audience that doesn't know you, do you mind just kind of getting us rooted in your childhood or your upbringing to get us started in this conversation in your career journey?
Yeah, the kind of the 2-minute bio is I grew up in the Midwest. My parents were school teachers in Madison, Wisconsin, and I came east to play basketball and attend Dartmouth College and, really enjoyed New England and got my first job in venture capital in 1986 at a firm called TA Associates in Boston. Worked there for 4 years, went to HBS. Great influence from a couple of people early in my career. Kevin Landry at TA, first real boss and kind of a legend in the business, and Clayton Christensen, uh, probably one of the smartest, kindest people you'd ever meet. And both of those guys had great influences on my interest in entrepreneurship, technology, venture capital, and, you know, really started Alumni Ventures um, now about 12 years ago. And with a pretty simple idea that venture capital is a really important asset class, and it's really hard for individuals to put together the quality and size portfolio that you really should in this asset class, and really set out to bring kind of a network powered VC approach to retail investors and, leap ahead to 2025. And, we've been really one of the most active venture capital firms in the world the last 3 years where, we bounce around somewhere in the top 5. I think we're generally considered one of the leading co-investors. So very important distinction that we don't lead rounds, we don't price rounds, we don't sit on boards. Um, but we really try to be helpful to our portfolio companies by accessing a huge network. So we've raised coming up on $1.1 billion, 11,000 customers, just a huge community of people that are out there to support entrepreneurial companies. And so being able to activate that network is really our secret sauce. And so, it's a great privilege to, help entrepreneurs build companies. And I love what I do every day. That's great.
Yeah, that's great, Mike, and I'll just bring you back, and I'm so curious when you think about your time at Dartmouth, and then you talk about your first role at TA. Um, uh, Help us think through, like, where was your mind relative to VC work at that time?
Yeah.
Did you think of yourself really as entrepreneurial? Was it a very calculated move to get into that spot? Like, help us think.
No, no, it was totally random. So the, the, the way it worked out is I was at Dartmouth and I was an engineering major and just was interested in technology and learning. And I'm a big fan of kind of the liberal arts, and I love school. Um, I love sports. I love the social life. I love Dartmouth, but I was starting to take classes, auditing classes down at the business school, and really found people there I liked. I liked the subject matter was super interesting. Again, my parents were teachers, so I didn't have even a super big business background. But it was like, this is what I love. This is what's interesting to me. And, senior year, I was like, I think I'm going to go to business school. And so, which was nuts. And so I talked to some professors and they discouraged it. And, I took the GMATs and did really well. And I applied to Tuck, the business school at Dartmouth, as a senior, and I got in. And, was just hanging out, enjoying my senior spring, ready to go to Tuck right after Dartmouth. And, I got a call from a professor who said there's this venture capital firm down in Boston looking to hire somebody. And I think you should absolutely not come to business school right away. Go talk to this guy. And I said, that's great. Appreciate it, professor. Like, what's venture capital? Literally. And he explained it. And I go, that sounds pretty interesting. Let me go talk to this company, this firm. And I went down there and I interviewed and it sounded cool. Venture capital was like, this is really interesting. These people are super smart, super dedicated, amazing group of people. And yeah, I basically got the job and I deferred business school. And, I went down to Boston and started to work at TA Associates and really loved it and loved the people, learned a lot, didn't know anything, but I think I worked hard and I hustled and I learned quickly. And I was about ready to go back to Tuck after kind of 2 years. And, you know, Kevin Landry, came to me and said, we really don't want you to go to business school. Why do you need business school? Stay here. And, what do you want to stay? And so I told him what I wanted and he said, done. So I ended up working at TA 2 more years. And then, basically I really felt that where I wanted to go in the world and in my life had business school as part of the equation. And, by then I was just at a different point in my life and I, had friends at Harvard Business School and, just decided like a different place was the right thing for me. So, I applied to Harvard and Stanford and, at the end of the day, was lucky enough to get into both and went to Harvard and really enjoyed my time there. And so that's kind of the story of like how I got into venture capital. It was total serendipity. Clearly the privilege of being at, Dartmouth and a good school and the fact that TA had a really strong affinity with Dartmouth was super helpful to me. Um, so again, it's a lot of luck. It's a lot of privilege. Yeah, it is hard work. I think I, took advantage of situations as they presented themselves in life, but yeah, that's how that all came about.
Eh, I think it's so cool, Mike, that, when you talk about Alumni Ventures, you're you talk so much about the network and how that's really the driving, kind of piece of it. I think what you just shared is so cool in the sense that, that professor that just happened to say, "Geez, I think you should try this." I
Yeah.
mean, it's almost like your network was looking out for you before you even, had it as, as your network, you know?
Yeah, no, it's been an influence, right? I mean, the success so often is in the agency and teamwork of others, right? And we were talking before the show a little bit about, some of the NCAA tournament and the teams and the adversity and I have a lot of young people today talk about, business school and is it worth it? And it's so expensive and it's opportunity cost and 2 years of your life. And I do get all of that. And yes, you can even learn a lot of the information, quote unquote, of, marketing if you're driven enough, you can self-educate. But what you can't replicate is the credential and the network. So, the young people where I think it makes sense, what I'm pitching is not go to business school to learn something. You go to business school to develop a network of people that you will have with you your whole life. And, I've been fortunate enough that, a school like Dartmouth, Dartmouth people are just so open to helping other Dartmouth people. It's a small school. It's in the middle of the woods. You bond in a club or on a team or in a fraternity in a way that is really, really lifelong. And, as transactional and capitalistic as HBS is, your section mate are people that you will connect with and know your whole life. And, I was talking to a section mate just last week about I've got an upcoming trip to Japan and we've got a few section mates over there, and it's like we're checking in on them, and it's like, oh, I should look up this person while I'm in Japan, and those things are very, very powerful. And that's one of the things I've tried to bring to Alumni Ventures is, it's the network, it's the connection to be able to use a network of people to help source deals, to evaluate deals, to help our portfolio companies. It's venture capital has always been kind of a networky, clubby business to begin with, but just making that network more available to regular people. That by plugging into this network that we can all do better in this important asset class than any of us could do on our own.
Yeah. Well, it just, I feel really lucky, Mike, because I've watched what you've done kind of from afar, as just being a general kind of New Englander business fan, right? Like it's been really neat. Um, I knew you before I got, introduced, luckily as really, everything I read is you have a knack for turning unconventional ideas into successes. Like, could you that was the Mike Collins brand that I knew before, I got to meet you. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and how that came to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think being an entrepreneur takes certain ingredients. One is you have to have incredible grit because it's really hard to start businesses. And it also takes I think a sense of optimism that you have to believe in the future, you have to be a problem solver, you have to view the world as possibilities versus, everything's negative, everything's an obstacle. So, and one of the things I look for and we look for in great entrepreneurs is seeing the world through a different set of eyes and what is possible and what problem is really hard. A lot of people think of like entrepreneurship is, oh, it's a really clever idea where, I ask questions like, what do you view differently than everybody else? What do you think the rest of the world has wrong? And what really hard problem are you going to go spend 10 years of your life solving? And so, I think that those things are both true about Alumni Ventures is, most of the venture industry starts with the proposition, which is you raise capital from large institutions that you raise money from endowments and pension funds and sovereign wealth and family offices. And, we looked at and you don't want to bother with a heart surgeon in Des Moines who is really successful, but maybe only has $100,000 a year for venture capital. Why bother with that person? Right. And we instead said, that's really the market. That's the opportunity. That's the disruption. Because if we band together those kinds of people, that's enormous value to each other, to a portfolio company who wants to talk to a heart surgeon in Des Moines. And so, yeah, I think those are two ingredients, Sean, of just looking at the world in, what's possible, what's a problem that is worth solving. And if you can And if you can solve it, there's real value to be created. And so I think those two things come from, you know, the confidence of being around other entrepreneurs. I do think that this is another thing that a really good education can give you is the confidence to go tackle big, hard problems. But yeah, it's a long and windy road. I mean, just take something that is from the past years. You had just recently, OpenAI raised the largest, probably most successful private venture round in the history of man, raising, $40 billion at a, 260 billion pre-money price. The CEO got fired not that long ago, right? And had kind of a traumatic weekend of like the board firing him on Friday and then trying to hire him back on Wednesday. So it's just like, that's a near death experience for Sam that is like, I think showed enormous grit and perseverance to make through. So it's just like, everybody goes like, it just goes to show you that this is, what we do is tough. And if you're gonna succeed, there's a lot of luck, there's a lot of timing, there's a lot of serendipity, but there's also just an enormous amount of kind of grit and wherewithal to see things through.
Well, Mike, I'm gonna kind of turn us a little bit here in conversation. It's interesting. All of our guests are CEOs, but our audience is really a broader based audience that are really fascinated with leadership, just overall leadership. Um, could you tell us a little bit about what you would consider the first leadership role that you had?
Yeah, listen, I go back to sports. I mean, it's like, I played sports were really my outlet in high school. Again, I went to public school. It was a good, solid school, but not terribly challenging. And so my outlet where I really got challenged was through sporting and being an athlete. So, I think there's a lot of lessons that come from sports about leadership and, so we love people that, started organizations in college, ran clubs, participated in sports, and just the lessons of athletics, which come to, work ethic and just trying to get 1% better every day by showing up at and practicing when you don't feel like it. And being on good teams and bad teams and having good coaches and bad coaches and good teammates and bad teammates and injuries and adversity and all of those kinds of things. So I think, yeah, first real leadership um, uh, really came there. And then, a lot of those lessons really have applied and carried through to this day through companies I've started, companies that have succeeded, companies that have not succeeded, um, and really, starting Alumni Ventures at, the ripe young age of, 48, right? So this myth that all entrepreneurs have to, start a business at 22, um, is not true. Actually, a lot of our most successful companies, we're talking to entrepreneurs that are on their third or fourth swing.
It's without experience, and thanks for sharing that. And I think, both Sean and I can relate to the impact of athletics and being part of a team and the various experiences you just described. How does that, and again, all your career experiences, your lifelong experiences, how does that translate to sort of your philosophy, at your company? And that kind of ties into why people work. They want to be there. What's that experience going to be? In addition to obviously the profession itself and the objective you have professionally.
I mean, we talk a lot of the language of teammate, right? I mean, I think where you work, it's not your family. I mean, family is kind of unconditional love, right? Kind of thing. And that is not, I think, the business world. And it's definitely not the high stakes poker of venture capital. But I think the teammate philosophy and language applies much more, which is, you know, supportive, but high expectations, right? Focus on process and outcomes. Both are required. And that, you know, sometimes, you have to take a hard look at the team and what's working and lean into what's working and then fix what's not working about the team. And sometimes that's an individual, sometimes that's something structural that needs to get fixed. But, there is nothing more rewarding than being part of a good team that is successful. Again, we were talking a little bit about the Connecticut women's team and how emotional their victory was in the NCAA tournament recently. And I think that emotion comes from the adversity that those teammates had gone through together. And, Gino talked about, they decided to love each other at some point, not as family members, but as teammates, right? And when you have a small and motivated group of people that are on a team with a common objective, amazing things can be accomplished. And that's really fun and really rewarding. And it's it's in the language we use, Chuck. It's in the way we organize the company. So even our investing professional, right? Organized into 10 sub teams. So we have, roughly 45 investing professionals we have teams in Menlo Park and in Chicago, Boston, New York, but we have teams of 3 or 5 people. And it's that sub team that really works together as a unit, and they have their own style and they have their own biases and chemistry and idiosyncrasies. And, we think we're stronger as a company because we have 10 teams that all view the world a little bit differently. And so, that's kind of how it translates in a couple of ways for us and how we think about bringing kind of that teammate. And even when we interview people, I was just on an interview earlier today, and it's like the questions that I love to ask are, what makes a good teammate? What's the best team you've been a part of?
Mhm.
What kind of teammates do you like and to work with, and what kind of teammates bug you? And all those, it's in the context of not, yes, obviously you're an individual contributor always in your profession, um, but you really have to think as a team and accomplish things.
Now, I'm happy you mentioned sort of the 10 teams within the overall team because we always not forget, but sometimes we don't always appreciate that even in any organization, the complexity of the different micro
Yep.
cultures, within your overall culture. And that sort of 10 team concept's a good description of that.
Yeah, and our investment teams are 10 teams, and we have our engineering team.
Right.
And our engineering team has their own office. And they come to headquarters, they visit, but they have their own vibe, right? And we have a finance team and a marketing team and a compliance team. So it's like, and then we encourage teams to work together. So we'll put together what we call a tiger team, which will include a cross section of teammates when we're trying to achieve something as a company that needs a little bit of marketing and a little bit of finance and a little bit of the perspective and investment team. So, it's not you're just sitting in your silo, but then you have the ability to mix and match to achieve objectives. So, which we find super important and super healthy. So it's like you're part of your functional team, you're part of these tiger teams, and then you're a part of obviously the Alumni Ventures team. And I think that is fun. It's interesting. It keeps it fresh. Um, we all need breaks from our families and our teams and our day-to-day work families. So the ability to kind of, in fact, today, it's just like we have we have a need for one of our teams has a surge of activity. So we basically internally said, we said, hey, does somebody want to raise their hands to work with this particular group on this specific project for a period of time? And you have volunteers that want to do that. They want to grow. They want to work with these people. We find that that's a really good way to do it.
Mike, I really love the team analogy, right? The not a family, a team. It's interesting. This past weekend, I have twin boys. They're 4, and they had basketball practice this weekend, and that's interesting and exciting in and of itself. But we were teaching the pick and roll, and one of my boys was the ball handler, and his brother was the screen setter, and explaining that dynamic, right? So I'm telling Jace, I say, "Hey, Jace, you're gonna go stand in the way of that defender,
Yeah.
who's gonna ultimately bump into you, so your brother can get open and maybe score or maybe do something else." And my Jace said, "Why? Why would I do that?"
Mhm.
You know? And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, because we're all, your whole team's trying to accomplish this one goal of getting the ball in the hoop, and that's gonna make it easier." And just kind of, watching that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the, it's listen, I think there are a lot of lessons there that you're touching on too, which is, and you try to bring those things forward. A couple things we do at AV just to, reinforce that point is, we have a company bonus that we do every quarter and everybody gets it. And it's a percentage that can range from 0 to 5% of your salary. And it's based on how the company did in the last quarter. And it is everything. It is short term, long term, things we can measure, things we can't quite measure, but we know good, bad, ugly, all of the above. But it is one company. It is time where we win or lose as a team. And so obviously there's different jobs and there's different forms of comp for different jobs within a venture firm, but that's one particular thing it's about all of us. And the analogy of your twins, which is we have people that get up every day and set screens. So we just got out 41,000 K1s to our investors. So that in and of itself, if you know what getting K1s done in venture capital is like, is a bit of a miracle and a really, really hard thing. It's one of the issues about being a venture capital investor is it can wreak havoc on your taxes. Because if you make a lot of private company investments, your accountant and tax person is going to go nuts. But we get those out to people in an amazing fashion. And just literally managing 41,000 K1s is a hard thing. Okay. And I've got a team that basically works 6 to 9 months of the year to make that happen. That's the equivalent of, you never shoot the ball, you never score, you're never going to be interviewed in the press conference because your job is to be sure that the team's uniforms are there when they suit up at night. So it is a really important job that is greatly appreciated by our customers and is part of being, successful as a retail venture capital firm, but doing things that reinforce the fact that we are one team in a way that we celebrate, a good quarter, a bad quarter as a group, I think is a really important message. And yeah, it's not only the glamour jobs, right? It's the people that are just getting up every day and doing the work. And it goes back into, my upbringing in the Midwest and my parents, just being hardworking people that just got up every day, never made a bunch of money, but they just took pride in their jobs of getting up and working hard every day. And in the world that sometimes can be a little underappreciated, and especially something that is kind of hot and sexy like venture capital. At the end of the day, the great venture capitalists work their ass off.
So I'm curious, you have a very unique perspective, as an investor, as a researcher, but also as an entrepreneur, as a CEO, as a leader. What advice would you give to anyone listening to this as they're thinking about their career and trying to advance, but also whether it's being an entrepreneur, but also trying to be a leader and being successful? What advice would you give to somebody?
I mean, I think there's just tremendous opportunities today to learn, listen, be curious about the world, try new things. I mean, I think the people that I've seen that have been really successful just are curious about the world. And this is especially true in entrepreneurship and venture capital. They're always learning, they're always listening, they're always wanting to ask good questions from other people. They get out there, right? I mean, they say yes to opportunities to learn, to grow. And so, yeah, when I talk to young people, it's get out of the apartment, get out of the house, go do stuff. There's so many opportunities now to network. This is one of the tragedies of kind of, I think, COVID is people became more insular, but I just see an explosion now of, people getting out, wanting to do, pitch contests or networking events or joining, run clubs. Just get out and socialize, get out and meet people, get out and learn, go find people who know more than you. I just think there's just such great information. There's so many tremendous podcasts out there where you can learn. There's so many great physical events where people are having events. I mean, even Alumni Ventures, we have a full-time events team that is just, about our investing professionals getting together with CEOs, getting together with our investors so they can talk to each other. What are you learning? What are you seeing? What are you hearing? What do you think? I've been, again, had the great privilege of having great mentors, people that I could learn from, and just trying to continue to do that. And, it's funny about the kind of mentor-mentee relationship. I think the mentor can learn as much from the, you know, I learn as much from, the younger people as they learn from me. Like, what are you listening to? What are you doing? Why are you thinking that way? Tell me about that thing. What's that on your phone? What are you doing? So I think great entrepreneurs are great listeners. They're great at asking really good questions and they just absorb it all. And again, they're just putting pieces together that for a little bit from here and a little bit from there, and it becomes this prepared mind, I think is just so important that, you take all of this in and then it's like, oh, this is why we should make this investment. Or, this is this opportunity that is just coming together for me and this other person to start this new business. So it's just absorbing it all. And I think, is a part of this story, right? I mean, I'm talking to you now. I've got 5 screens around me where, there's communication going on with people over here. There's AI doing research for me over here. There's something that somebody mentioned that I don't know anything about. I want to learn more over here. So it's just, it's such a powerful tool now for all of us to have personal professional coaches, personal tutors, gee, I'm going to Japan, I want to learn the key phrases. I want to learn some cultural things about the city I'm going to and the companies I'm meeting. It's like that is so now at your fingertips if you just kind of lean into wanting to learn.
Yeah. I mean, geez, Mike, this was a lot of fun, man. I personally, a real treat for me to get to chat with you and learn more about your journey. Really appreciate your time today and all you shared with us.
Yes. Sean, Chuck, I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. Let's do it again.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your time today.
All right. Be well.